Hey everybody, this is my 125 gallon New World tank, and recently I've had a little bit of cloudy water, and at first I wasn't sure what was going on. I didn't know if I got some cloudy water from the substrate I had added, which may have clouded it up since it was a calcium carbonate based substrate. I didn't know if it was perhaps a bacterial bloom, or for a little while there, it actually started to take on a little bit of a green tinge to it, and I thought perhaps it was actually an algae bloom. And it turned out to be nothing more than a simple bacterial bloom. And once I had established that that's what was going on, I basically sat back and did nothing at all, and I let the tank sort itself out, and it only took a couple of weeks to do so, and the water has pretty much cleared up. It's not entirely back to 100%, but it's pretty close. And my philosophy of less is more and not really doing anything at all to my aquarium pays off quite often, but it's also important to know that that's not always the case. There are times when you really need to get in there, and there are times where you need to get in there immediately and do stuff to it. And it's important to know the difference when to stand back versus when to actually act and do something. Never at any point should you just panic and start doing stuff in extreme ways, huge water changes without really knowing why the tank is doing whatever it's doing to cause you to want to do the water change in the first place. Stop, think about things, find out what's going on to the best of your ability, and then respond accordingly. And that's what I did with this tank. When I first saw the water was getting cloudy, my assumption was that it was the substrate I had added, some crushed coral. And a lot of times when you first turn that on, it sort of dissolves into the water and gives sort of a milky effect. And I thought maybe that's what it was. I did a little bit of a water change, and that cleared it up a little, but it sort of started coming back again. But the first thing I did was I checked my basics. I checked for the nitrogen cycle basics. I checked ammonia, I checked the nitrite, and don't have to really worry about the nitrate in this case, but I got no noticeable ammonia. There was none registering on the test at all, and I got no noticeable or none registering on the nitrite as well. As long as I'm not seeing those things, the alarm bells can calm down. I don't need to panic at that point. Nothing in there is harming my fish. If it's a bacterial bloom, it's a bacterial bloom. It's not harming my fish. If it's algae, again, it's not harming the fish. So if I'd found ammonia, that would have required immediate response. I would have had to get in there, I would have had to do a water change, and I would have had to do enough of a water change to reduce the ammonia down to safe levels. I would have been checking my pH to find out how toxic the ammonia is, and there would have been a whole bunch of different things I would have done had there been ammonia in there, or if had there been nitrite in there. I would have reacted differently, but I still would have had to react immediately if nitrite was there. These are substances that are actually toxic to the fish. If you find those kind of substances in the tank, you need to react immediately. If you notice that your heater is broken and you see that your heater's been on all day and you test and the water is 96 degrees, you need to respond immediately. You need to do a water change and start bringing that water temperature down. Not radically, but you immediately need to start bringing that water temperature down a little at a time in a fairly rapid but gradual sense. There's plenty of times, however, when you can just say, I'm going to give it a few days and see what happens. More often than not, that's what you need to do. If your fish are not in immediate danger, if they're not in water temperatures that are way too high or way too low, if you haven't had some pH crash where for some reason your pH is falling and won't stop dropping, these are circumstances where you need to react immediately. If you've got cloudy water, you getting in there and messing with the filter and doing big water changes and gravel vacuuming and wiping down all this stuff, and I've had all these suggestions made to me over the last couple of weeks that we've been looking at this cloudy water, and that's just going to make things worse. Just relax, let the tank take care of itself. It's going to sort it out. It's not hurting your fish. It's just a little bacterial bloom. Let it run its course. And that's what I did, and here's where we are. I didn't do anything. I did a few water changes, but that's because I was staying on top of my normal maintenance. I wasn't panicking trying to clear this water up or find the problem or whatever. I know what I did. I went in there and I messed around with the filter. I added new substrate and I made some changes to the tank. It caused a little bit of a bacterial bloom of some sort. I don't know the exact ins and outs of what was going on, but that was a pretty cut and dry, you know, something happened and then I got a little bit of an effect from it. As long as there was no ammonia or nitrite or anything that was harming the fish, I didn't need to do all the things that a lot of people were suggesting I needed to do. A lot of times you just sit back and relax and wait and your fish tank will sort itself out. Now again, that's not always the case, but that was the case here. And I will say on a last note, I did get a really good bit of advice from one of my Patreon patrons when I was not entirely sure whether or not I had an algae bloom or a bacterial bloom. He suggested that I actually just put some water in a white container or perhaps a clear container over a white surface and look down into it with a bright light on it. If it showed green, then I'd know there was algae in the water, but otherwise it shouldn't show any green. And that's what I did. And in the white container, I got no green at all. It just had a little bit of a tea stain. And of course, the cloudiness wasn't going to show up in a white container either. So all I got was a little bit of that tea staining color. And that's when I knew it's not an algae bloom. It's just a little bit of a bacterial bloom going on in the tank, and just let it run its course. And I did. And again, here we are. Everything looks fine now. Had it been an algae bloom, I would have still had to do some stuff or figure out why I was having this sudden algae bloom, and we would have had to address it, but not in any kind of radical, panicky sort of way. Panicking is just never going to be the thing to do. Well, at any case, but especially here in the fish keeping hobby, you just don't want to get in there and start doing stuff out of reactionary sort of behavior. Stop, think about what you're doing, think about what needs to be done, and don't do anything too extreme or radical, because that in itself can shock your fish more than whatever's going on in the tank in the first place. So that's all I got to talk about today. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching. Hope the glare off my head didn't blind you too much, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.